I know deep down in my heart that Matthew McConaughey is not my friend. Despite my lingering soft spot for his charming Texan accent, his role in my life amounts to nothing more than pixels on a screen. Still, that did little to ease the pang of betrayal I felt after spotting him in this commercial for the software company Salesforce, nursing a broken arm in the back room of an overcrowded hospital.
Hey, Doc.
Feet in stirrups, please.
Wait, why?
Because you're an OBGYN.
Breathe from your diaphragm, brother.
No, Agent Force helps healthcare providers prevent medical mishaps. It's what AI was meant to be.
It's gonna be cold.
Notice his sweet, sweet Texan drawl just completely camouflaging the dystopian premise of that ad. Apparently, in our dysfunctional hospital system in America, your odds of healing a broken bone now depend on the use of a new AI program. Watching this, I couldn't help but conjure a word from deep within my psyche that I hadn't heard in literally eons. Sellout. In recent years, it feels like our pop culture landscape has become so dominated by athletic wear brand deals and laxative pill endorsements that it's kind of hard to remember an alternative. A-listers now seem to treat art like a side hustle, and advertising is their main career. For Matthew McConaughey, I guess it's not enough to earn millions by smoldering through the window of a Lincoln SUV or lounging around shirtless for Dolce & Gabbana cologne. He just had to become the creative director of Wild Turkey Bourbon, launch his own Pantalones Organic Tequila brand, and now he's out lending his rugged charisma to AI platforms. Just a few decades ago, the idea of an artist using their platform to shill products was not only considered tacky, it was a moral failing. It was a betrayal of your fan base and a stain on your integrity. That's why American stars traveled to Japan to film commercials. The shame of being caught in an ad would dissolve years of goodwill they'd built with the public. Just look at Tommy Lee Jones. Here, he's known for his Oscar-winning gravitas, but overseas, he's been the face of Suntory canned coffee since 2006. It's the whole premise of Lost in Translation. A washed-up, ashamed Bill Murray has to hide out in Tokyo just to promote a whiskey brand. Today, he'd probably name it Murray Malort and slap his own face on the bottle. It's no longer possible to even pump gas without being assaulted by an LED screen blasting commercials, which kind of means they start to blur together. But there is an unmissable pattern that has formed in marketing, and it's probably best illustrated by corporations' favorite holiday, the Super Bowl. In the last 5 years, the number of Super Bowl ads featuring a celebrity has skyrocketed to 72%. That's more than double the rate from 2010. And most of these ads include multiple stars. You're telling me they got David Beckham, Jennifer Aniston, and David Schwimmer in one commercial? Take my money. Celebrities are no longer scared to trade the public's admiration for a paycheck because they no longer have to trade. Sure, I mean, Matthew McConaughey could probably live forever off the dividends from Interstellar, but if he's going to face zero backlash for shamelessly hawking liquor and AI platforms, why wouldn't he? To understand how we lost our dignity, we need to trace the mass commercialization of art. And with it, the disappearance of American counterculture. Because if everything is for sale, there is no such thing as a sellout. In the 1960s and 70s, the penalty for colluding with a corporation was exile. Jim Morrison famously flew off the handle when the Doors agreed to license Light My Fire to Buick in 1967. Apparently, he screamed at his bandmates, "It's corporate! You guys just made a pact with the devil!" Then he phoned Buick himself and threatened to smash one of their cars on live television if the ad aired. The drummer for the Doors, John Densmore, later talked about this outburst with pride, saying, "I guess that's one of the reasons I miss the guy." But Morrison's anger made sense because rock and roll was centered on rebellion. The movement wasn't just a threat to pearl-clutching parents, but to the establishment in general, which included corporate America. If rock was the religion of counterculture, then using it to sell cars meant sacrilege. There was nowhere that this anti-consumerist ethos was more evident than in the fields of Bethel, New York, in August 1967. As the largest music festival in history at the time, Woodstock drew a crowd of over 400,000 people, only about half of whom even paid for a ticket. Once the crowd had overwhelmed the infrastructure, the organizers called it a free event, and hordes of unwashed 20-somethings spilled into the surrounding farmland. What's even more astonishing by today's standards is the fact that Woodstock had zero corporate sponsors. There were no branded tents, no banners covered in logos, no snack of the revolution. Contrast that to today's festivals, where selling out is completely structural. At New Orleans Jazz Fest here in Louisiana, it is impossible to avoid the Shell logo, just in case you forget who's sinking the state's coastline. At last year's Austin City Limits, each stage was branded by a different corporate titan. There was the T-Mobile stage, the Honda stage, the Miller Lite stage, and most egregiously, the American Express stage. That's where the headliners performed, of course. If you were an Amex cardholder, you literally got to enter the festival through your own separate line, hang out in these exclusive air-conditioned lounges, and you got early access to all the merchandise. So now, corporate presence doesn't just fund the show, it literally defines the physical space and the social hierarchy within it. And sure, I know, the mythology surrounding Woodstock kind of blurs some more complicated truths about the 60s and the era of love. But honestly, as far as consumerism goes, the contrast is still extremely stark. So at this point, by 1971, just 2 years after Woodstock, the music world had already lost Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and that Buick-bashing Jim Morrison. The hope of the summer of love was pretty soon replaced by the more nihilistic nonconformity of punk rock. These spiky-haired anarchists didn't want free love, and they definitely weren't selling it. In the Clash's song, Lost in the Supermarket, their visible disdain for capitalism is shining through the lyrics. I can no longer shop happily. I came here for that special offer, a guaranteed personality. When the Sex Pistols released God Save the Queen in 1977, the lyrics incited a full-blown moral panic across England. Yes, fans of the monarchy didn't like the rhymes fascist regime and she ain't no human being. After Johnny Rotten first performed the song, one politician even suggested that punk rockers should be buried in mass graves. Most of these groups would be vastly improved by sudden death, said Bernard Brooke Partridge, who's a conservative member of the Greater London Council. They're unbelievably nauseating, the antithesis of humankind. I would like to see somebody dig a very, very large, exceedingly deep hole and drop the bloody lot down it. That same Johnny Rotten, by the way, who sang that song, would later appear in a commercial for Country Life Butter. Because the real turning point wasn't punk's decline, it was the launch of MTV in 1981. When MTV, or music television, burst into American homes, it ushered in an entirely new era for advertising. The 24-hour TV channel didn't just kill the radio star, it also birthed the corporate celebrity. Suddenly, with just the click of a remote, these companies were given access to a direct line of information on what the youth found cool. And pretty soon, advertising execs began to copy the DIY aesthetics of the underground. There's a 1989 New York Times article titled How MTV Rocked Television Commercials, and it analyzed the channel's impact after Coca-Cola enlisted a punk rock filmmaker to direct their latest ad. It reads, consider how advertising agencies took to Mustafa Khan, a 26-year-old television commercial director with Vanguard Films, Inc., after he showed them the $3,000 video he made last year for the punk rock band Rude Buddha. Mr. Khan's most recent spot for Coca-Cola cost 100 times more than the Rude Buddha video, yet it used many of the same techniques, including slow motion, split screens, quick cuts, unnaturally bright coloring, and, most prominently, the use of music. Before too long, it became difficult to tell where MTV's music programming ended and their commercial breaks began. It was the whole point. Philip B. Dusenberry, who was an advertising executive for Pepsi Cola and Apple, he admitted that this channel had completely changed the way young consumers viewed advertising. Here's what he told The Times. MTV's impact, first and foremost, is as a teacher. It has educated a lot of people, particularly young people, to accept lots of information in a short period of time. Dusenberry probably didn't realize the long-term effects of that impact, but educate to accept is kind of an eerily apt description of advertising today. If we bombard you with enough product placement, enough celebrity sponsorship, and enough please to please buy our product, you might just accept it as normal. However calculated MTV's tactics were at the time, they totally worked. When Michael Jackson's groundbreaking Billie Jean video debuted in 1983, it cemented the channel as a cultural force. That same year, Michael Jackson signed a multi-million-dollar endorsement deal with Pepsi, which kind of marked a point in this marriage of pop music and corporate sponsorship. Tina Turner and David Bowie soon followed in his footsteps and signed deals with the brand. Of course, not every artist was ready to embrace this era of the endorsement deal. Neil Young famously fired back against it in 1988 with his song, This Note's For You. He sang, ain't singing for Pepsi, ain't singing for Coke. I don't sing for nobody, makes me look like a joke. MTV banned the video. Their blacklist only made Young's point clearer. And at this point, the industry had chosen a side, and it wasn't with the holdouts. There's probably no one who embodied this tension between anti-corporate ideals and mainstream success more than Nirvana. So Nirvana left their small Seattle label Sub Pop to release Nevermind with Geffen Records, which was one of the big 6 corporate labels at the time. And Kurt Cobain acknowledged the complaints from all the purist members of his fan base. He told Rolling Stone, "I don't blame the average 17-year-old punk rock kid for calling me a sellout. I understand. And maybe when they grow up a little bit, they'll realize there's more things to life than living out your rock and roll identity so righteously." It's almost nostalgic to think that Nirvana's version of selling out back then meant signing to a major record label instead of naming their 4th album 0% APR credit card or some shit like that, the way a band might today. But by the end of the 20th century, this corporate capture of counterculture was in its final phase. The clearest symbol of this shift came in 1999, when promoters tried to resurrect the spirit of Woodstock. If you're familiar at all, you'll remember that they created Woodstock 99 instead, which was a festival so commercialized and mismanaged that it felt like a parody of the original. It was sponsored by Hot Topic, Pepsi, and AT&T, and the event charged exorbitant ticket prices and descended into chaos almost immediately. The water supplies dwindled by literally the first day, and under that blistering 100-degree heat, vendors were charging $4 a bottle to these dehydrated, sunburned attendees. It's the equivalent of $8 today. Some people reported paying up to $50 to drink water. 3 people died. There were rampant sexual assaults and rioting, which marred the weekend, all of which was broadcast live on MTV. Via pay-per-view, starting at $60 a package. Part of this cultural shift is actually economic. Just as advertisers were ramping up their pursuit of musicians, all of these artists saw their most reliable source of income disappear. In 1999, a rudimentary music sharing service called Napster debuted, and the industry was transformed forever. Time magazine writes, "Over the course of the next decade, rock and pop music sales fell by half. And Napster and other sites like it complicated things by planting the idea that consumers didn't have to pay for music." Since then, streaming has completely obliterated the financial model for musicians. Spotify is notoriously cryptic about how it pays artists. They won't come out with like a fixed per stream rate, but they cite this kind of murky formula, which is based on factors like where the person is listening and what kind of subscription they have. But in reality, real-world case studies tell a much clearer story. Artists typically receive fractions of pennies per stream. In 2020, a composer named Zoe Keating told Business Insider that for her, a single stream on Apple Music paid less than 1/10 of a penny, while on Spotify, she received even less after distribution fees. Spotify is quick to point out that they have no knowledge of the agreements that artists and songwriters sign with their labels, so we can't answer why a right holder's payment comes to a particular amount in a particular month. But even independent artists, who theoretically own all the rights to their own music, say they're paid next to nothing. There's an Iranian-Dutch musician, Sev Deliza, who releases music under her own label. And she shared that on average, 1 million streams amounts to an artist being paid $2,500. She wrote on Twitter, "Deduct taxes, management, and cost of product. How are we ever supposed to make music sustainable?" So ads are more than just tempting revenue for artists. Nowadays, they're pretty much necessary to stay afloat. But A-listers don't have that excuse. So why is Billy Idol pushing Workday's new AI assistant? Why is Eric Andre promoting the sports betting app FanDuel? Why do dozens of celebrities feel comfortable exploiting the public's affection to promote crypto and credit cards? The answer might lie in what Americans now consider aspirational. In 2009, the 2 most popular career goals listed by middle school girls were actress and musician, while boys of the same age went for video game creator and professional athlete. Now, compare those goals with a very depressing survey from 2023, which showed that the majority of Gen Zers, that's defined as people aged 13 to 26, would choose to become a full-time social media influencer if possible. And that's not just young people. 41% of all adults, regardless of age, said the same thing, that they would choose to be a full-time influencer if they could. I mean, that statistic is alarming for a lot of reasons, but perhaps most sinister, I think, is its implications for consumerism. It's like the goal isn't to be something anymore, it is to sell something. The blind faith that young consumers have in endorsements has grown significantly in recent years. Between 2019 and 2023, the percentage of Gen Z and millennials who said they trusted social media influencers when deciding to purchase a product rose from 51% to 61%. Interestingly, our faith in celebrities to tell us what to buy took an even steeper jump, from 40% to 56%. Then, when you look at our trust in the opinions of friends and family, that number actually dropped by about 5 percentage points. These content creators and starving artists might hustle because they have to, but A-listers do it because they can. Advertising is no longer seen as embarrassing. If anything, it's viewed as glamorous. As an added bonus, celebrities don't have to start from scratch because the public is already listening. You might have noticed one of the most insidious forms of this phenomenon while you're driving to work or taking a jog with your headphones in. For some reason, podcast hosts have universally decided to lend their full, authentic voices to sponsorship scripts. It drives me insane. It's not like they're playing a character in a commercial. First, they kind of lull the listener into a false sense of security. Usually they're providing some kind of authoritative commentary, maybe, on the Russia-Ukraine war or Trump's tariffs. And then they smoothly transition into, anyway, as you guys know, I've been thinking lately about how important health is. That's why I've been loving these meal boxes from HelloFresh. Often, they'll even riff off script to make the ad sound more natural. Even Jon Stewart, longtime critic of corporate culture, is guilty. In a recent episode of The Weekly Show, Stewart interrupts a discussion about President Biden's cognitive ability to plug a cat food brand. Come on, man. It almost feels tongue-in-cheek, like he's poking at the ridiculousness of it all. And I get it. There's producers, editors, sound designers to pay, and ads bring in revenue. But at least when The Daily Show cut to a break, I was under no illusion that Jon Stewart, personally, endorsed each company that purchased an ad spot on Comedy Central. Why make it sound like you, Jon Stewart, have strong opinions on cat food? But what's even worse than that are the podcasters who openly promote questionable or downright scammy products. Just take a look at the sheer number of celebrities who swear by BetterHelp. If you've listened to even a single podcast lately, you've probably heard ads for this shady online therapy service. The company has sponsored over 58,000 podcast episodes in the last 5 years alone. Many of these are hosted by beloved media figures who are urging their audiences to join the app to improve their mental health. Don Lemon, ousted CNN host, is one such supporter of BetterHelp. What he fails to mention is that 2 years ago, BetterHelp was fined by the Federal Trade Commission for sharing users' private health data with advertisers. The FTC found that BetterHelp used and revealed consumers' email addresses, IP addresses, and health questionnaire information to Facebook, Snapchat, Criteo, what's Criteo, and Pinterest for advertising purposes, including questions about why the patient needed therapy, what their concerns were, and whether they'd been treated before. This was a complete betrayal of people seeking mental health care, and it wasn't even hidden in BetterHelp's fine print. The company straight up lied about it. In 2021, after 10 people died during a crowd crush at Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival, BetterHelp teamed up with the rapper to offer traumatized attendees a singular free month of therapy. Very generous. Naturally, of course, fans and media outlets were kind of wary of this deal, which led the company to publish an FAQ page. The last part of this FAQ addressed BetterHelp's data privacy practices and asked, is information that members enter on BetterHelp ever sold to an advertising platform or third party? The company's response was an emphatic no. That press release is actually still available on BetterHelp's website, but curiously, that specific question regarding data privacy seems to have been deleted. So, is it really possible that legions of celebrities like Don Lemon, who has now read over 57 advertisements for BetterHelp on his own podcast, are completely unaware of this history? Hey, Don, aren't you a goddamn reporter? Why don't you put that journalism degree to use and take 10 seconds to Google the corporation you're promoting? In ad after ad, there's this blatant disconnect between celebrities' carefully crafted personas and the products that they're promoting. And it's honestly insulting. Just look at George Clooney. He recently reprised his dashing detective character to sell disposable coffee pods for Nestle. Yes, that is the same multi-billion-dollar corporation known, to summarize, for its use of child slave labor in Africa, illegal water pumping from drought-stricken Native American reservations, and lying about infant nutrition to sell baby formula in the global South. Hey, George, Doesn't everyone love you because your wife Amal is an international human rights lawyer? Why didn't you just stick to making another Ocean's movie? But here's the thing. This is the new face of consumerism. It's winking, it's ironic, and it's coming from the mouths of people that we respect. Thomas Frank wrote about this in Commodify Your Dissent. He said, "No one wants you to think they're serious today, least of all Time Warner. Corporate America is not an oppressor, but a sponsor of fun, a provider of lifestyle accoutrements, facilitator of carnival, our slang-speaking partner in that quest for the ever more apocalyptic orgasm." Celebrities are the perfect mouthpiece for the shift because we trust them, and they're willing to cash in on that trust. 40 years ago, advertising co-opted rebellion. But the whole brilliance of today's machine is that they don't need to anymore. Out of exhaustion, or maybe just because we fell for it, we stopped rebelling altogether. Still, it is not too late to bring back shame. Not the kind that ruins lives, maybe, but enough to make a celebrity think twice before lending their credibility to protein powders and crypto casinos. We should start by treating each new promo code with the skepticism it deserves. And remember, no one with a tequila brand is actually your friend. We have no advertisers, only our gorgeous subscribers. Thank you for tuning in.